And then also Veronica wanted to just remind everybody that if you are a DAMA South African member and you have written and paid for your exam and passed, there's what we call just basically a give back, where we give you money back depending on your pass levels. I think it was Veronica has the details, but it's quite a sizable amount. I think one of the ladies got her master, or just missed her masters the other day, and she was able to get the refund and retake it. So hopefully I haven't gone down. Can everyone still hear me? Debs, you can still hear me?
Yeah.
Fantastic. Okay, just gone through load shedding and my machine's still okay, so that's fantastic. All right, so we had a really nice session last week. It was really nice to go through the different frameworks, and Veronica's typing in that the details on the payback at the moment as we speak. Okay, so this is the area that we dealt with last week. And it was pretty. It was a pity that Paul missed out. So we'll have to just give him a quick test to see whether he remembers all these different areas. Paul, you ready for the test?
He's not.
Mr. Bolt? Okay. Okay,
Shucks.
so that was for the data quality manager. So remember, it was those things that the DMBOK really just focused on the plan, do, check, act. But when you get into the specialist exam, you must understand the DMAC, the Duran trilogy, the Deming, the Short-Deming cycles there already, but some of the comments that were made and some of the principles that he had. And so the specialist exam, really, you need to pay attention to some of the thought leaders and the frameworks that they have established in terms of defining your implementation cycle. Okay. And one of the things I challenged people with last week was that which one do you choose? There was something like 20 that I went through, and it's up to you to choose one, or create a combination of them. But you have to be able to explain why you've set those up and what value do they bring. All right. So that was the data quality manager. He basically establishes the practice. He gets all these frameworks, methodologies right, and then he does that review. And then this week, we're going to be talking about the data citizens. And these are the things that I need to teach the stewards, the owners. I need to get them to understand the implementation cycle, to understand critical data elements, to understand how to do a cost and impact assessment of our data quality issues. And then what I always like to do in my specialist training is to show you those 7 basic profiling tools that you can do before you sit down with the data steward to get the data quality expectation or the data quality rules. And here is the next step, which you'll go to from a professional point of view, would be the how do we define a process of data quality expectation and initial assessment, the architecture for data quality, and we'll then go on to the data executives after that, and we'll do some business cases. There's the Canadian Institute for Health Information, and there are a few that I'd like to share with you. So that will come not next week, but the week after. So again, if any of you would like to just stop me and pause, happy to go through that. Does anyone want me to just go quickly through any of these sections that we did with the manager? Just to look at some of that review criteria. Would someone like me to go back, or are you all comfortable with that?
Hi there, Howard. Sorry to just chirp in rather than putting my hand
No
up.
problem. No problem.
It's Karen from Old Mutual. We only joined from this week. So whatever you covered last week is a complete blank to us. So I'd be very grateful if you could do a quick recap.
All right. Let me do that quickly. Okay. Fantastic. And I'll do it. I know Paul didn't say anything, and I'm picking on Paul today, but so this is the practice establishment. So the very first thing that data governance needs to focus on is how do they establish a data quality practice? Okay. Now, this is what we have in terms of we call them game plans or playbooks and things like that. There's a whole lot of different areas, and you can see this is from our data governance for certification course, where we go through how does data governance set itself up, what are the different areas, and once data governance has got a set of use cases plus done a maturity assessment, we can then go and look at the data quality strategy. Okay, and remember, the data quality strategy is part of the data management strategy, which is aligned and derived from the data strategy, which again is aligned and derived from the business strategy. Okay, so we got those hierarchies that you must pay attention to. Get your business strategy out, and in some cases you may have a digital strategy. Then you get your data strategy, and once you've got your data strategy, which focuses purely on the issues and the opportunities that business have with data, then we go to a data management strategy. And the definition of a data management strategy is that it must cover all of the areas of the DM BOK, and it goes down to all of the different domains, and it says, okay, how is data quality going to help and implement our data strategy? Okay, so this is where we bring now in the data strategy. We then understand what is the operating model. We have to do a practice definition of the data quality domain. So what are the different steps? And you're going to see now how much of this detail we go into. They would define principles, policies, and procedures and reference architecture. I keep on referring to that as P3T. Please remember that. Data governance, you got to go start with your principles. Then you got to have policies that codify the principles. Then you got to have procedures that implement the policies. And then you have reference architecture, which is guided by the business requirements and the procedures. Always helpful, get your procedures done, and then find your technology that's going to help you implement the procedures. And then you have to redo your procedures for the technology that you're working on. Okay. Then we go into operationalization. So you've got all this defined, you've signed it off with the steering committee, all the business people have agreed, yes, we are going to do it. And it's easy to agree. It's a different thing to then get it operationalized. That's when we talk about training. How do we train? How do we make everybody aware of all of their obligations and roles and responsibilities? That's what we refer to as operationalization. Very hard. And only once you've got that going, can you get to that level 3 of your DMMA to be able to say that I've now standardized the way in which we do things across all the different domains and the different business units, sorry. And then we have assurance. So data governance, you then have to start marking the fact that we're doing it and can we optimize the process. And then what I always like to do is to say, with all these principles, policies, and procedures, they should be managed within a policy framework, and we need to constantly review those policies and procedures. Typically, you review procedures basically each time you execute it, but policies are whenever the event comes about or at a scheduled time. Okay, so that's basically the practice establishment. Then we went through this implementation framework, and we spoke about all the different techniques, and you can see here there's ISO 8000-61. We've got Six Sigma, we've got Lean, Duran. These are the different approaches that come on, and you'll choose them for different reasons. So can you see here, ISO emphasizes certification and standardization of processes across organizations. So this is very helpful, for example, in Saudi, that they want to standardize across all the ministries. So they would then say, well, all the ministries, you should implement this framework and get certified. Now, they, in a way, they have created something called the NDMO regulation, so they are getting certified to the NDMO regulation, so they don't really need to go to ISO, but it is about having that framework. This is the framework that's defined by the NDMO. Then we got Six Sigma, and that's about quality control and using statistical methods. And then we've got Duran, which is about reducing waste. So he focuses on those different areas of waste and reducing the waste. Okay, so what I did was to say, well, now that I've got these 20, 30 frameworks, how do I compare the two? How do I make sense of these two? And we can see the different comparative perspectives. I will release the presentation, so I'm not going to go through all of it, but these are the areas that we need to compare. We need to compare our different frameworks and see how it works. And you have to look at the different phases, the techniques to assess and improve, the dimensions, concepts, data quality dimensions, concepts, and metrics, the types of costs of DQ issues. Okay, so how do we look at the cost and the impact? And the thing I like about this one is basically you should be convincing the CEO, the steering committee to say that with all of the investments in data quality, when we reduce the costs of data quality issues, that should offset the costs that we invest in the data quality program. So we should see a corresponding reduction on DQ issue costs, on the cost of DQ issue. But we need to be able to define it, right? You can't just say, oh, shucks, yeah, we write this thing and it's all nice. We'll write a business case and then we forget about it. We've got to constantly be looking at our improvements and what we've been doing. Then the types of data. Do we all deal with, is it just focusing on structured data, application data? Does it also focus on data warehouses? Does it focus on websites, unstructured data, data lakes? So we now need to pay attention to that as well. Some of them don't always deal with all the types of data. Some of them are relatively old, like, for example, Duran. They've been around for a while and they weren't doing unstructured data at that point in time. Types of systems, then organization structures. And we had a really nice discussion last week in terms of it's not just about distributed organizations or multiple business units, but you can also have the data fabric, data mesh coming in where each domain is an area on its own. And you still need to be able to look at the constant quality across all the different domains. Processes that CRUD. So are people paying attention to the business processes that create, read, update, and delete? And remember, that's important when we need to fix at the source. We've got to find the related process that's causing the problem and fix that up. And then what are the different data quality services? So dimensions for evaluation and comparison. Okay, so these are the different phases we spoke about. We're going to talk about that some more. Different steps in assessment, in improvement. And then we're going to talk about how do we do the improvement? Is it process-driven improvement or is it data-driven improvement? And please remember that process-driven improvement is probably the one that's got that long-term solution. Data-driven would be some form of data fix. Not always. It could also be a data model change. But then you may find that your applications are failing because they were inserting null records or null columns, and now they've got to adjust to that. So the end goal is that process tends to have the long-lasting one. They are the ones who initiated the poor quality, and if we fix them, then we get the benefit coming through. Okay, so that's why it's important to understand what processes are basically crudding your data. Interesting term. Then we understand what are the sets of dimensions that framework works on. And this is something that I've really seen over and over again, that the definition of a dimension changes across different frameworks, and you have to be aware of that. So please, whenever you pick up a framework, understand how they define the dimension and then the concepts underneath the dimension. There's quite a few differences there. Okay, so there's no general agreement. I like to use the conform dimensions from Dan Myers. I really like the work that he's done and the website and all the different concepts. I appreciate that. So this is the cost of the DQ program, something for you to read, the different types of data, the rule development, how do these different frameworks talk about the rules, how do we build the rules? And so here are the different frameworks that we did the review on, or that was that you can use to choose one. Okay, so here was just a quick run through of where the different frameworks operate. Do they have requirements analysis? This one doesn't. And you can see there's one over here. CDQ was actually designed to implement every single area. A lot of them do not, are incomplete, except CDQ and COL-DQ, and I believe that's Lotion. So can you see that not all of them are complete, not all of them deal with everything. Some interesting ones. ISTAT, as an example, dealt with multiple government organizations. It was developed in Italy to keep organizations together, and when they publish open data or data about different ministries, they can share the data, and they've got that to help them. Okay, different improvement steps. Very helpful for you to understand what the improvement steps are. And then whether the types of strategies, do we do data-driven or process-driven? See, there's TDQM, focuses predominantly on process-driven. This is data warehousing, so that would focus mainly on data-driven, okay? So you can see, depending on the area that you're working in, the system that you're working on, you may apply a different approach. Okay, so there's English and Lotion. Those are some of the thought leaders. English did TIQM and Lotion does COL-DQ. Okay, and there's a comparison there. Now, this is one of those diagrams that I like to be able to say, okay, for example, the different quality dimensions and the different levels of improvement, assessment, and the costs. So there you can see that not all of the frameworks deal with costs. So it's predominantly COL-DQ, CDQ, and TIQM. Now, I think that's quite important. And so you'd want to bring that cost level in. And I'm going to show you today, we're going to talk through some of those different issues. Okay. This was a nice diagram put together by a man, a researcher by name of Carlo Bettini. And he was from Italy in Milano. Okay. So he's done quite a nice comparison of these different areas. All right, so I'm hoping you're getting a good understanding. Karen, I hope this sort of gives you an understanding of how to compare the different areas. And here we are, the different information systems. So monolithic would be your ERP. Then you'd have distributed systems. That would be your data mesh, data fabric, data warehousing, cooperative systems that, like there's ISTAT across different government organizations. Okay. And DA Quinn CS was also across distributed organizations, not just distributed systems within an organization. Okay. All right. Then we did just a framework review where we went through all of the different ones. It just showed how they came together, and there was lots and lots of information here, but very helpful that you read and understand it. This is total IQM from Larry English. So go through it and see what he was trying to achieve. I really like understanding the thinking. This CIHI, which is the one we're going to do the use case on. And what I like about them is they differentiate between data quality and information quality. So they are receiving data from all the different hospitals in Canada, and then they go and build time series and analytics on top of that. And so they have, okay, they do quality on the data that they receive. They call that data quality. And then they do quality on the time series and the advanced analytics that they do on top of the data. Okay. So also a nice thinking, and we're going to review that a little bit later on. Okay, so then we have DQA, and they spoke about subjective metrics, perceptions. That's also important to be able to understand that, and objective metrics. Okay, so those are the ones that you can measure and everyone's in agreement with, and there's a business rule that you can define. Okay, so you don't need a survey to be able to understand that. All right, Corin, is that helpful? Just checking if I know it was quick.
Thank you.
I'm hoping
that was great.
Okay.
Thanks.
Excellent. Mr. Bolton, did you pick up that as well?
Thank you, Howard.
All right. Okay, so now let's go through the implementation cycle. So what I'd like to just share with you is we've done all the planning, we've agreed what it is, and now we want to go and implement. Okay. And so what I'd like to do is just say what we should do is harmonize across these different frameworks. That's my approach. I like to then bring the nice things on these different areas, and then using this approach, which is reconstruct the state of the data and the processes, do a data quality assessment, and then do an improvement, and then repeat the cycle. Okay, and we'll share that. So there we go. This is all the practice definition done up front, and then these are what we call our implementation cycle or business as usual. So this is where our citizens will be constantly, as they pick up a data quality issue, they're going to have to start, okay, we got a quality on this report. Now let's go and build all the metadata for that report, that lineage, whatever it is. Let's understand the processes, what their purpose was, and then let's understand the organizations that are involved or the organizational structure across multiple business units. Okay. Now, a lot of what I found on Plan, Do, Check, Act, they don't deal with this, right? They don't do that state reconstruction. And that I'm happy with if you've got everything defined, if you've got all your business models, but how many of us are there? How many of us have all the data models and the process definitions and the organizational sharing agreements and things like that and the metadata? We don't really have that. So my concern is, guys, be careful of this. I think we need to understand why and how the data gets to its state before we start with the assessment. Okay. And then we go on to the improvement. So there's my reconstruct. Can you see now when I do the assessment, first of all, what's my critical data? We then do a profiling. We do a quick profile. We then, using the results of the profile, we build a expectation, or what I refer to as a data quality requirements analysis. Then we go into the measurement. Then we actually go and evaluate the data according to our expectations and DQ rules. Okay. So that's an interesting deliverable that not many of us, and the DM book doesn't have it, but they talk about it over and over again. They say, what are the expectations? Is it fit for consumption? Is it fit for purpose? What are the expectations of the business? So how do we document it? So these expectations are the combination of the business rule, the perspective, the user who wants to do it. That's what's important there. And then we go into the measurement. And after the measurement, we're going to report a set of issues. From the issues, we're going to do the root cause analysis. And then we're going to say, well, okay, now that we understand the root cause and we've done that Pareto principle, okay, remember the 80-20 rule, then what we will do is to say, okay, let's fix the 20% of the issues that are causing 80% of the lack of reliability on the data set. So that's important. I see Paul, you asked the question, is expectation the measure?
Yeah, so looking at just looking at the examples that we use, there's an expectation which sets the stand or sets the level of where this thing should pass. Is that what you talk about when you mean expectation?
Yes,
So like it must be a 75% complete or
correct,
etc.
correct,
Okay,
correct. And I'm going to show you an example of that. We'll actually go through an example of how to set these expectations up next week, how the data quality special analyst should be talking to the business and extracting these rules from the business. Okay, but that's exactly it. And basically what it does is to say, for a data set, for a use case or a perspective or a purpose, by critical data element, by dimension, by concept, by metric, then you'd have the min and max. Paul, remember, so there's that whole sort of hierarchy that you have to work down and
Yes,
collect
yes.
all the data quality rules for all of those areas.
Yes, yes.
And maybe
Cool.
just to pause there, are people comfortable with that level of data quality rule specification? Are there any other questions on that? Okay. It may be helpful to give you an example. Would anyone like to see an example? Is everyone comfortable with that, or would they like to see an example of those data quality expectations? Everyone's quiet today.
It would be better to get an example.
Okay, fantastic. So I'm going to get through that now. Let me
An example would be appreciated.
Okay, fantastic. So there's an example of, I've got a set of Excel templates. Happy to share it with anybody. Certainly when we do the data quality course, we take you through on how to populate this. Okay, so you can see there's a data quality rule. There's your data set. Now, what is the perspective of this expectation? Okay, remember, you can have one data set and you can have 5 consumers, each with a different perspective. They use it for a different purpose. And so we need to understand what is that purpose that this has been used for. Remember, data quality, fit for purpose. So you can't just focus on these 2 areas, the minimum and the maximum and the CDE. It's got to understand the perspective that we're coming from. Then we've got the critical data element. There you can see the dimension, the underlying concept. Is this a critical area? And then we've got mins and maxes. What is the state of the rule? And then what is the rule description? Okay. And so this is basically how we define it. And these are the steps. So we understand what the data set is, who's the consumer, what are the critical data elements, and in that we understand what decisions the consumer is going to make, dimension, concept, measurement status, the minimum and the maximum, the rule status, and areas like that. Okay. All right. I'm going to have to jump back to where I was. Does that just to check that did I explain that well enough? Can you now see what an expectation looks like?
Yes, it was quite clear.
Thank you.
Okay, fantastic. Okay, so that's now I promise you, you can't just sit with a data steward, a data citizen, and say, please give me all these answers, because typically what the data steward's going to do is say, well, everything must be 100%. And then what you have to do is you actually go and have a look at the data. And that's why I like doing the profiling before I do this. And I said, but you can't get 100% because please understand your completeness is only sitting at 50% at the moment. So how am I going to give you 100%? If I accept your 100%, my problem is that tomorrow I'm going to tell you to stop using this report because it doesn't meet the expectations. Okay, so there's this tension of wanting to get to 100%, and you have to hold back on that to be able to say you're asking for too much. Now, if you have to have that level, then what I like to suggest is raise it with internal audit. This has now become a risk. How do we, and they can justify it from a business point of view. We would do a risk assessment on it, a risk rating, and then we would go through a process of saying, okay, how are we going to fix it? Do I need to change the source? Do I need to go wherever it is? And Paul, you may remember that from the work we did with one of our customers, and we had some industry segmentation, which was a disaster, and the recommendation was to go and find it from the Authority of Statistics. Okay, so we actually had to go and get the data from somewhere else. Okay. Right, so we've done through these expectations. Now we go through the measurement, and then we look at the improvement. How do we remediate it? Then we go into our action. We start fixing it. All right, so this is part of the plan and plan do. So we're doing it, and then we go back into review mode. Okay. All right, so that's what we refer to as our implementation cycle. So if we read through that plan stage is where we get all the issues. Okay, now we've got the set of issues. We've done our root cause analysis. We understand. We then go through the process of fixing the problems. This can be data driven. And then we check to see whether we've achieved that new target level. So this is important. This revised targets. Okay, it's in a way it's telling us don't go for broke, don't go for 100%. You could be sitting for the rest of your life trying to get 100%. Okay, and then you can miss all of your deadlines. So set the target. Let's say you were at 60, and you can say, okay, we're not going to go for 100, but let's try to get the data to 70%. And then we'll then do the appropriate remediation to get to 70%. And then we get to the next one. We go through another cycle. Okay, we'll go through the cycle again. And then try to get it to 80, 90, 100%. And I'm always careful of saying that because I don't think we'll ever get to 100%. Sometimes we just can't get there. Okay, so what I like about this diagram, this DM AIC, DMAC, they call it, is it gives you a set of tools and techniques that you can use per stage. Define, measure, analyze, improve, control. Okay, so here we are defining the quality that we require. Okay, voice of the customer, all right? That's going to be who's shouting, who's telling us that this data is really bad. Okay, that's what we mean by listening to the customer. Okay, then we identify the outputs that we're trying to achieve, what types of data. This is profiling, variation versus discrete. Data collection, so what sort of data do we need to collect in terms of the sampling? When we measure the measurement system and the process capability, the business process. Okay, analyze, so this is the different ways of analyzing. Remember the 5 whys, not 5 wives and 1 husband, but the 5 whys from Danette McGilwray. She talks about asking why 5 times to get to it. Hypothesis, and then we look at the improve. So interesting there, look at that Moscow. Who remembers what Moscow is? What we must do, what we ought to do, what we should do, what we could do, and what we won't do. Okay. Then we conduct a cost-benefit analysis, and this FMEA is actually in the specialist exam. Those people, how many are here are interested in doing the specialist exam, the data quality specialist exam? Quick hands up. Won't is crucial. Yes, Martin, 100%. We got to look at excluding the things that we're not going to do to set those expectations. Nice, Paul. That's great. So FMEA is something, a failure mode effect analysis. So if we fail, what is the effect going to be on our system? What's the cost going to be? Yes. I'm not sure if I'm Harry. Is that the correct pronunciation? Yes, Harry? Your hand is up, but you're on mute. Okay. Harry, I'd love to hear from you. I can't hear you at the moment. Just interrupt when you finally get connected. Okay, and then there's also validate of the measurement system. So are we measuring, then we have to measure again. We have to reset our measurement, right? We reset some of those rules. when we try to reach the next level of quality. Okay. And then this is also important, that control. So once you've reached that area of control, and I'm going to just try to give you an example here of Mr. Duran. I don't see it. Okay, let me get back. I love this diagram. So I'm just going to share with you a diagram that I like to use. Sorry. Just trying to get to my PowerPoint. It's this one over here. I can't find my, I'm missing one of my, there it is. Okay, so if we look over here, can you see this Duran trilogy? I really like the way he puts it together. Guys, we're not going to get to 0 errors. So you currently, your control zone is here. Then you go through the whole assess and improve phase, and now you get your next level, your next zone of quality. And that's that chronic waste. Remember that Pareto principle I was talking about? The 80-20. So you're going to get this reduction, and now you're going to be at that level. So now we have to, once we've got to this control level, we get to that new level, and then we got to hold it. That's what's important about that plan, do, check, act. Check, have we got to the level, and act is constantly making minor adjustments to that. I'm hoping that makes sense. Okay, just check if. All right, let's keep on going. Harry, please shout if you, I can see your hand up. If you, when you do manage to get on board, that will be great. Okay, so we've got SPC, statistical process control. Please remember what that is. It's about doing that analysis of what the level is, and you got your mins and maxes. And when it jumps out of a min or a max, then we have to go and analyze it. So it's almost like a proactive scenario where you get told every morning, where did I operate at? Where were my processes, level of my processes operating at? If I broke the min or the max, I need to get someone to go and look at it. And we're trying to ensure that we don't have business people shouting at us. We actually detect it before the business people shout at us. Okay. So that's what this process is. That's very helpful. Here are some nice areas on the root cause analysis, the different tools. I'm sure you've seen that, cause and effect, or that's and the Ishikawa diagram, the Y analysis, histogram, box plot, and I'm going to show you some of those. And there's your FMEA as the FMEA. Okay. All right, so now we're going to focus on these 2 steps over here. This assess and improve. And you can see the steps of assess and improve. We need as input, we need our state reconstruction. And the first thing we do is a data analysis. So that's bringing the state reconstruction. Then we look at our data quality dimensions, and we go and do a requirement analysis. And from there, we deliver our DQ rules. Then we go and do a measurement of the quality, and we get our DQ values in the DQ scorecard. Okay, then we look at the different techniques that we can use to resolve this, and what the budget is. So what budget do we have to fix the problems? Okay, then once and with these different values, we can look at the errors, the causes of the errors, the cost and benefit. Then we select a strategy to help us improve, and then we do an evaluation of what the different costs are to be able to fix this. Okay, now what I did here was just to show you when I compare these different frameworks, and you see the different frameworks that there's PDCA, Plan, Do, Check, Act, DM AIC, CDQ, and Duran. I've got a set of outputs that I believe we have to create. Okay, the output is unified metadata. What's our data lineage? What are data models? What is the different profiles? We need a unified meta model to explain the state of where we at. We need our business processes defined. We need organization definition. We need critical data elements identification and profiling. So these are the outputs that we need to produce, the different steps and things like that. And now you can see, and what I battle with PDCA is most of it sitting at the plan do side. Okay, so most of these deliverables, plan do. Okay, 10 and 15. And so we can see our average in terms of the amount of deliverables, 4.25. And now we can see this big skewing on medium and deviation. Whereas if we go to complete data quality, there we go, which is state reconstruction, assessment, improvement. We've got a much better average number of deliverables that we're creating per segment of work. Okay. And then the Durand trilogy actually does very well as well. It's actually one of the better ones. There's the different areas that it has: planning, control, and improvement. Planning, correction, and improvement. Okay. Any questions? I'd like to maybe just pause there just to see if there are any questions that people would like to understand.
Howard, just a quick question. Could you just understand the PCI and the PCA and the PCD? What do the numbers represent?
Oh, so the number of deliverables or number of outputs that I need to create per phase, JG.
Okay, it's the count of the block. Sorry, thank you.
No problem. So you can see my plan is the big one, and that's always something that when I look at this plan, do, check, act, it's almost like I get a whole lot of work that needs to be done in this phase, and then I'm moving on to only once I've done all of this, so that front end is loaded, and then I get a very small tail end, in that situation. Whereas the Durand trilogy and the state is a lot. I find it a lot better, a lot more grouped in that situation. Does that help you, JG?
Yeah, appreciate it, Howard. Yeah, and just that statistical outlier view of the Durand trilogy tells a story of how you'll just never, don't aim for zero, just aim for what your next set of outliers are going to be. Thanks, Howard.
Correct. Okay. All right. So this is just a different comparison of the different frameworks. So choose your framework, map it to these standardized outputs and the different definitions, and then understand where you fit into that scenario. Okay. So this is some work that I'm doing for a customer. I'm sure some of you will recognize it. And we've gone through some adjustments to say, okay, that's our strategy phase, data quality strategy phase. We're not going to deal with it right now, other than to say that, yes, we have done the initial assessment of some of the important areas, and we've set our targets where we want to be. That's important, because then we come into the execution by use case, and now we go and do a data reconstruction. Okay, so get me all the metadata that I need, the business glossary definitions, the reference data, the master data, the metadata, the data models. Get me all the data that I need before I go and start doing this analysis. Okay. Then also tell me what business processes are operating on this data. So we could have, when we look at our lineage, and I don't know how many of you attended yesterday, where we actually did a data flow with Caroline Mouton. That was for data privacy, but she actually did quite a nice one within the space of an hour, where she said, we get the data in from this person. This is our data subject. Then the data moves from here to here, and the data moves. So within an hour, we did a high-level data flow, and that's almost what data privacy requires. I don't know how many of you work in the data privacy area, but they have a thing called ROPA, which is a registry of processing activities. Okay, so this is helping you build it, and you can piece the stuff together. And then also organization reconstruction. So are you going across different business units, different businesses? Are you getting the data from somewhere else? And I know Paul was involved in quite a few discussions this week about getting data from the authoritative source, or the institution that's deemed to be the authority, but then everyone complains and says, it's not good enough for us, and we've got this problem. And then it's a case of, well, what do we do now? How do we ensure that the ministry that has been recognized as the data owner of that data, that what can we do to fix the data? Or do we build ourselves our own? Now, in some cases, that's really hard, especially when for example, postal addresses or address information. Now, building address information for the country is not an easy task. Okay, so that's the state reconstruction. I'm hoping you guys can see the benefit of that. Then we do the actual assessment. We then do the improvement. So the assessment is do the analysis of the data, and then the quick analysis, the profiling that, then do a requirement analysis, then go and measure your quality. Okay, then we go into the remediation phase. Okay, and then we go into correction and then control. Okay. And then once, when these cycles are done, what we're seeing here is basically our trend monitoring, and the review of the metrics. Are we reaching the metrics? And then these checkpoints, basically the assurance. There you can see this is data quality assurance and data quality implementation. So from a practice point of view, we'll find our data citizens and our business data stewards operating in this area. And of course, they will be looking at the trends to see, well, are the changes that they are making helping us? Okay, I'm going to just jump through that initial phase. And here you can see what I've tried to do here is give you a set of steps and outputs. Okay. So, for example, state reconstruction. I need an issue list. I need the critical data elements. I need the business definition. I need the data model for the critical data elements. I need the data catalog, the data dictionary, the data lineage, the business process, application systems, and my use case list. Now, when you get into your data quality, the first thing you do is this data quality profile. You can be doing a statistical analysis and then the data quality visualizations. Once you've done that, you start then sitting with the data stewards and do your data quality expectation. Once you've got that, then you can do the formal assessment. And again, I'm going to pause here. And so many times I see people mixing up profiling and assessments and almost seeing them as the same thing. All right, profiling is there to help me engage the data stewards to get the right data quality rules. And then we're going to do the assessment according to that fit for purpose definition. I'm going to just take a deep breath there and check to see whether anyone has a question or an observation. Is that something that they do? Yes, JG.
So, I mean, Howard, can you just land that question within the context of the perspective that we discussed earlier? Because there will be some data scoring that depends on the perspective, and therefore it doesn't have to be, onerous because it depends on the use case. So how does this tie in with your use case perspective?
Okay, so this is a flow of activities that the data stewards are going to be involved in, okay, for each use case. So we choose a use case, we then go and reconstruct the state of the data, the business process, and the organization for that use case that's involved in the use case. Then we do an assessment. And what I'm saying here is that please understand there's this difference between profiling the data using statistical analysis, discrete and continuous, min, max, null, distinct values, and then actually doing the data quality assessment. Sometimes what happens is that we start raising data quality issues on the profile.
Okay. No, I completely get you. Cool. I understand. Yeah. We're actually depending on the depending on the use case, a min-max range might be acceptable.
Yes, correct.
Thanks.
100%.
Cool.
So until I've got that data quality expectation, I do not know whether it's an issue at this point in time. Okay. And what I like to say to a lot of my people is that because profiling can be automated, you can actually get a situation where you, on a regular basis, you profile your data using a SQL Server agent job that profiles the data on a regular basis and gives you the profiling results. Okay, and you don't really need any form of commentary from the business data steward until we want to build the expectation. So I can have the profile with me at any point in time, looking at the trends on that data, and then I use that as input to start the discussion. Okay. Do the assessment. Once the assessment's done, raise the issues, then do a cost and impact assessment of the issues, and then gives me my priority, my data quality priority. Okay. Understand the data quality priority, especially using that 80-20 rule. Okay, then I would go in using the technique, fishbone, as is process, track and trace, 5 whys. I do the root cause analysis. I get an agreement that we've identified the root cause, and everyone's happy that we've identified the root cause. So almost a case of pause for a while after that assessment. Make sure that they are happy with the fact that you've identified the right cause. You may find that IT is not convinced that that is the root cause. Okay, so it's about getting everybody to agree that you've got the right cause. Okay, then once you've got the right root cause analysis, now this is when you get into project work and you can build your remediation plan, understand the solution matrix, whether you're going to go data-driven or process-driven. Once you understand the way that you're going to fix, then you do a cost-benefit analysis. Okay, what is it costing me to fix? What's the benefit? What's the improvement of quality? Then you've got your failure mode, your Moscow, your improvement, your optimal improvement plan. Then you document what is, you revise the DQ target, and you go and get the stuff fixed. Okay, and then you try to hold on to the new level of performance. Okay, and I'm sort of going to stop there. I just wanted to quickly show you some of these critical data elements, just a technique to understand what your critical data elements are. So I like this one. A lot of the times the DM box just says, here is the source of your critical data elements. Okay, so nice to have a flow chart to work your way through. A nice one from Cognopia and another one that I use to get that through. So for example, here's the DM box stuff. We also have another from, what's this lady's name again? Oh, I forget her name. Oculi. I'm not sure. I'll remember her name just now. Okay, now what you're doing, I'm hoping you can see here, you actually get what's called a critical data element prioritization. Right, so you need to bring in what are the priorities of your critical data elements across the organization and the business value. Okay, and you can then use to help you define those critical data elements. This is what we refer to as a cost taxonomy. Can you see the nice breakdown in terms of where positioning, what the different effects are, and then how to calculate them? And then these are your basic profiling tools that you should be able to present to the data steward to say, this is my understanding of the problem. The fishbone diagram, very helpful in presenting the fishbone diagram. The check sheet, okay, which problems are being caused on what dates? And JG and I did a really nice example where we looked at where our issues were coming out on duplication, and we found out that the issues were sitting on a date. Like most of the issues were sitting on one date, and we went to go and talk to the people and I said, oh, that's when we did the import into the new system. We did a take on. It's like, oh, okay, that's where half of our problems came in. So that check sheet is very helpful. This is what we call a frequency distribution of the data. Here is my SPC, min, max. And you see now that we're jumping out, those are the ones that we need to pay attention to. And we need to understand what's happening. The min and max are normal issues that come, they're not out of control. These ones are out of control. Okay. Histograms, very helpful to present this to your business to show what's the distribution of your data. And here you can see all the different types of frequency distribution. So again, very helpful. And this was some examples of what we do in Power BI, where we did it across different segments, where we could show the people what the issues are. And there's our Pareto chart that says most of my issues are coming from this guy over here. So as soon as I got the shrinkage, when I shrink, as soon as I go into shrink and paucity, I get my 80%. So what I really need to do is just focus on fixing those two. Don't worry about these little guys over here with all these different areas. They're not going to be as impact as this guy over here. Okay, there's the scatter plot and different ways of doing it. Flowcharts, box plot, this is for reasonableness. And so we need these tools. So you as a data quality, as a data citizen, you would have a look at this data. And so that helps you start defining your mins and maxes on your different rules. So I'm going to pause there. That's the end for today, and just check to see if there are any questions. Mr. Bolton, thank you. Any comments, any questions?
No, just good. I was just warming up to ask you to re-explain, because I wasn't landing how to set expectation. Is it subjective or actually calculated? And just saw from your graphs, just reminded me that you tend to the outlier, right?
Yeah.
And as you're tending to the outlier, your expectation should shift and get better and better and better. But you want to, is that the right thinking, or
not necessarily? What you're trying to do is, yes, you are trying to find those outliers, and then you're trying to quantify how many of them are sitting in that outlier area. So, for example, if you have that sort of outlier and it's causing a big impact, using those different techniques, Paul, then you can say, let's address the reason for that outlier. What is causing that outlier? So then you're going to do a root cause effect on that outlier. So yes, the outlier is the one that jumps at you and says, but for example, we could also be finding these ones that are out of control, and then we'd say, they are causing these issues here. So what's causing the arrivals to go to 12 minutes or whatever it is? Okay. I think what we did here was, if you looked at that, this is, or what they said was, we shouldn't have multiple contracts. We shouldn't have so many contracts for a contract number. And here we could see we had 1,273, and that pointed to an incorrect load that we had. And there's another one, for example, third JEDA, there was a situation of the different elements that they had. So these histograms, and this was the one that actually started showing us the start date. Can you see here that whilst the first date came in, it was sitting just over 2001. Then we had this massive jump in 2020. And so all of our data is sitting here. Now, Paul, one of the messages that we had with that was they actually wanted to use this data to forecast to 2050. I don't know if you remember that discussion. And when we looked at this data, we just said there's no ways that this data can support a forecasting to. No.
It's too irregular. Yeah, sure.
Yeah. So very helpful when you look at this data and say, well, now I've got a good understanding. I've got a good feel for the data. What is it going to support? What sort of analytics will it support?
Awesome. Thanks, Howard.
Ready.
Howard, also just probably just driving the message from the work we did, but the one chap asked me, he said, he's busy working by application. He's working on the CDEs.
Yeah, right.
And it's so big. It's just like it's massive. So we started chatting about the use case approach, selecting that priority and then going after that set first. So a little
Right.
bit different to just how it fitted into your talk as well, where you had those different methods of attacking or identifying CDEs. So I just wanted to bring that back to say, are any of those contradictory to what we were saying? Because it's, you know, do not boil the ocean was the message. Start small and aim big, you know?
Yeah. So Paul, yes, one of the things that I also find is that it's always a problem. Where do we prioritize? Where do we start? And those frameworks, as you can see, what I like to do is if I don't have a use case approach, I would like I then start to say, look, guys, if you're going to have to start somewhere, then start off at your reports, at your data warehouse reports or your data mart reporting, your dashboards. You know, start at something that your data citizens can recognize and they don't trust. So you may have a situation where you're dealing initially with data warehousing type of issues rather than application issues. Those application issues, they're massive, and you know, not many people can say, well, this is the actual problem with the application, but they can tell you the problem with a dashboard or a BI report or an application report. So what I if you use case is nice because it already starts giving you the critical data elements. If you can't get a use case approach, then you go to a report approach to say, okay, let's look at some of these reports, the most important reports that we're working on, and then let's start to trace our way back from the report side.
Oh, that's awesome. I like this. Cool. Thanks, Ad.
It's interesting. I had someone else come to talk to me and they said they did a whole CDE analysis and they started off at applications. And I said, you know, I'm happy with you're thinking about the right thing. You're thinking about getting the critical data elements, but you could take a long time to get to where you need to be if you start at an application level. So you're almost starting at the source, right? And what you're really trying to do is to start at the pain, or what I also like to do is to say, well, remember that the critical data elements are also there to support decision making. So if I take a report, my first question is what decision is going to be made using this report, and then what is the cost of a wrong decision from that report? That's quite easy to quantify.
Yes. Sure. Cool.
Where you
Thanks. That's excellent.
Yeah, where you do have some of the problems, Paul, is, and I'm going to just go through that thing, is the situation of having all of your decisions defined. And so that also takes a whole lot of scenario planning as well as to get your decisions set up and quantified, a decision inventory, as they call it. I'm trying to find out where I label that as you want a decision inventory so that links to your CDEs that are involved in making that decision. And I can't find it now. I should have a set of decisions that are going to be made. Yes. Any other comment, question? Thanks, Paul. Good question. Alrighty. Thanks, everybody. If there's no more questions, that's it for today. Enjoy your day further. I'm happy to sit and chat if you'd like to chat afterwards. Anytime, JG.
Thank you.
Thank you. Hisham, how are you doing, sir?
Not too bad, sir. And yourself?
Yeah, actually quite good. Doing quite a lot of review work at the moment. So just going through some different frameworks, and that's forced out a whole lot of this, just clarifying this thinking and stuff like that. So quite a nice engagement at the moment.
Oh, This is good. Like I did attend some of your session, and I can see that you were in Saudi most of the time. So how was
Yes.
the weather? How did you cope with the weather?
Oh, Hisham, it was something else. And we're now Paul's there. Paul's taken over from me, and it's sitting at 41, 42 at the moment. And it's, you know,
So how it was here when it was cool, Hisham, and he sent me when it's hot. So
But Hisham, it's, you know, I typically go running in the morning, and if I'm not out by 5 o'clock, then there's like 30, 31 degrees.
nuts.
Wow.
Sure. No, it's warm.
But I think you got used to it, especially because I see you wearing the dishdasha, which is the traditional
Yes,
dress
that's so.
code over there. So it keeps you
Yes.
cool, I would guess, right?
Yeah, it's a wonderful. I love the dress because I can go for breakfast within my short pants, and then when I come back, I just put I put the thumb on and I'm gone.
Happy days. Happy days.
Yeah, it was lovely. No,
That's
no,
cool.
getting the tie right and the yeah.
Oh, that's good. That's good.
I
I
love
didn't
it.
do the exam, by the way. I didn't do the data quality exam yet.
Oh,
I did. Yes, yes. I didn't do it yet, only because I did hear some feedback that it's a bit tricky in terms
yes,
of the
yes,
questions. And
yes,
even on today's call, I have seen a few new slides in your presentation. Maybe I
yes.
didn't see them before. So I was like,
No, no,
okay, it's good.
they so what happened was Hisham, I was asked by a customer to review a data quality regulation. And what I did do was to actually comment on the regulation, what it is. So, well, okay, here are all the frameworks, and this is my way of comparing the frameworks, and this is how your framework compares to this framework. So that's the work I did.
Amazing, amazing. Yeah, it seems like more progress, more update has been done, and I
Yes,
can see that, and it's great. Like I can't thank you enough for sharing this anyway with the community, because it keeps us up with the trends and what is happening in the market and what's the right approach, and sharing that experience does shorten our time when we come to a similar project or a similar
yes,
situation.
certainly.
So
Yeah, and yeah, I would love to. What I know we're all trying to work on is, having a well-defined set of outputs. I come back to this one again, Hisham, as a case of, we do it for our maturity assessment. Outputs are our core. And what I found was that when I had my core set of outputs, then I could easily compare what the frameworks were doing and what outputs were involved. And I keep coming back as, do we clearly understand the different outputs? And do we know what we need to create? And then do we have the procedures and processes to be able to build those outputs? So having the well-defined outputs helps me compare as well the different cycles and the different frameworks.
that is good, and I think also it's unlike data governance. You don't get much resistance when you talk about data quality, because I think the whole business is pushing towards the right direction in a way where it's easily to quantify to the business, so you don't have to
Yes.
do the ROI and all of that. Business already knows that they have data quality issue, therefore they're happy to accept the 2080 for the time being, because they need to kind of like target a milestone that need to happen
Yes.
in the next 3 months. So yeah, that's the positive thing about data quality in general.
Yes. I agree with you. What I did find very helpful, and that's something that I've introduced here, Hisham, is a case of course, it all comes down to costs and value that we deliver. And basically, what we're trying to do is to say, I should have a high level metric to say the cost of my DQ program in comparison to the cost of my issues. If I quantify my issues nicely, then I can justify the cost of the program.
Yes, yeah, I see your point, and I think
So that
also like maybe two lens that I have is like one lens is tying this to maybe a technology also, because
yes,
to have that
yes.
automation, you need to have the right tool to kind of like fix all of these issues at source.
Correct.
So
Correct.
that's one of the things. And I think the second part will be linking data quality to risk management, because
Yes,
it feeds
definitely.
into the bigger pool also of those risks.
Yes, and that's where I found, and I was talking to some health people, and they said, no, but we can't have so much error rate on our data. I said, well, unfortunately, that's what you've got. And I said, yeah, but we can't tolerate this. And I said, okay, based on what can't you tolerate it? What's the decision that you're going to make? So tell me what that impact is. Now, if you are right, now let's take it to risk rating, risk analysis, risk remediation. And I'm not saying you can't get there, but don't think you're going to go from 40% quality to 100% quality. And you the cost to fix it's going to be quite something.
Absolutely, yeah. And plus, it's very hard to. I wouldn't say it's impossible to reach 100%, but it's very challenging to maintain it in the 100%.
Yes, that's I think you're right there, and that's almost that that trilogy thing where Duran is saying, that next level of critical waste. Be conscious of choosing your next level of critical waste. Where you're going to get to. And don't go for perfect. I some of the times I share that, with us when we write programs. Can we ever build a program that's going to be bug-free?
I don't think that happened in reality anyway.
So can we get data that's going to be? I think we chase after that holy grail and get ourselves into trouble.
Yeah. But yeah, it's a very good session. Thank you very much for sharing all of that. I will definitely comment on LinkedIn. So
fantastic
for recording. And
and
would I be able to get the slides also?
Yes, you will. We'll
okay.
Certainly we'll share that with you.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Thank you, Howard.
So Mayela, 100%. It's an interesting one. So let's take the dimension. It's a nice point you raise here, Mayela. And what I like to talk about is let's look at a dimension. For example, accuracy. There's a comment from Mayela on the chat to say, well, the business should define what is 100%. And yes, they can define it, but whether you can achieve it, and even some cases they may not be able to define it. And to give an example, if I take accuracy, which is one of the important ones, and accuracy is how does it match to the real world? Can you and do you want to be 100% accurate? I don't think I think you set that standard too high, and then you spend a whole lot of money trying to get there, and you just can't get there. Mayela, I don't know if I'm answering your question, but that setting things too high, and then it's a case of why do I need it so high? Do I really need to have 100%, or is 95% okay? So
yeah, I think the question would be the remaining 5. Let's assume that it's 90%. What does the remaining 10% add value to the business? How can it contribute to either generating new profit or making a sale? How would that help us? And sometimes 100%, it shouldn't be in all the data sources, because we know some tables that, let's say that I have a table and I have an optional column. That optional column is not completed by customers anyway. So no matter what I do, if I control, let's assume that the table is 10 columns only, 1 column is optional. So no one complete it, or a couple of people complete it. So no matter what I do, I will not reach 100% on that table.
Yes.
Because there is an optional column, for example. So it have to be realistic in a way.
You're right. Mayela, I see your hands up.
Hi. No, I just my comment was it wasn't a question. From my experience about data quality, and it is really difficult to achieve 100%
Okay.
as a
Okay.
metric. Okay, as a metric for data quality, and the business need to provide to fix to fit the 100%. What is the
Right.
metric? What is the goals to achieve?
Right.
And
Yeah.
in the future, and just that can vary from now to the future. Maybe today
Yes.
is 80%, but maybe
Yes.
next
Yes. Yes.
year
Yes.
is 90%, etc. This is from my
Correct.
experience, okay?
No.
and
You.
how I want to notice something. Maybe this is from another webinar, but what about the data culture in a company? Because data quality is so related. Well, everything is
Yes.
related with
Yes.
the
Yes. Yes.
data culture in the company, and it is a very tough point
Yeah. Yeah.
to achieve.
So
Okay,
my
thank you.
Mayela, certainly what we actually discussed that last week with respect to the manager that sets up data quality. When we come to the so that's almost part of planning, planning and controlling the practice. It's not so much about the implementation. So it's a different discussion. But you are 100% correct. Quality is a critical aspect to it. And remember where I spoke on the subjective measures versus objective measures and things like that. That interpretation and that understanding of quality. It's nice to have those different types of measures where you can allow people to express an opinion and an understanding, and see how you survey that. But I think you're right in terms of how do we get people to change and go through that awareness, desire, and knowledge environment. So what is the cost of the issues that are facing me? Where are the problems? What is in it for me? Those type of things need to be addressed, but it tends to be have to address it at a governance level, if that makes sense. If I'm great. Thanks, everybody.
Cheers.
Howard.
Thanks, Howard.
Cheers, guys. Have a good one.
You too.